Over the weekend, the Conservative Political Action Conference was happening in Dallas, Texas. So I road tripped over there and interviewed people on the ground, something I like to do, talking with primarily people of the other sets of opinions. So I go to events like this and chat it up with them, and it always yields interesting results. But before I dive into that, I've seen a lot of rhetoric, even within my own audience, towards people who have very different views than us, that is super concerning to me. And so I want to help you guys understand, for those of you who don't already hold this opinion, something that's super important and something that I learn over and over every time that I do go to events like this, and all of the interactions I have in my personal life. So while I recognize, and I will say time and time again, and part of why I spend so much time on my show criticizing right-wing media figures, right-wing leaders, and right-wing ideology, is I really do think much of it is very dangerous, and the results of them being in power is hurtful. And we can do so many amazing things if we don't have those individuals in power. So I believe that to the core of my heart, and it's really important to me. And I think especially in this era where the right wing, at least those who are on board with Donald Trump, is very anti-democratic, because they're on board with someone who wants to undermine our democracy, who wants to claim victory even when there's no evidence to that effect, and tell the American people that it doesn't matter the way that you voted, it matters how I feel, and that I want to stay in power. And so I'm going to do all of this to try to do so. And so that's very bad and very dangerous. And that's why, again, I spend so much time talking about that on my show. But I need you guys to understand something before we look at any of these clips. And we probably honestly won't watch as many of these as I was expecting, because this is more important, but we will watch some in just a second here. You have to understand, when engaging with individuals, pretty much all individuals, that they are human beings who also are working and trying to, make a good life for their family, and they love one another. They love people within their life, and they're trying from their perspective to do the best that they can do. I hear progressives sometimes talk about conservatives, about people on the right, as if they're like a different species or something. And no, they've fallen into a media echo chamber, as have many people of all different ideologies, that has distorted their view of reality and thus led them to believing things that, yes, support dangerous candidates, yes, are dangerous, absolutely, the ideas themselves, absolutely. And there are individuals, I'm not talking right now about just people who have hate deep in their heart, and they're, building their entire sets of beliefs around that. There are that set of people, absolutely. That's not who I'm talking about. I'm talking about people who are sweet and loving and gracious in their heart, but then their perception of reality is one that distorts the way that they look at the world enough, where they believe things that I think are very wrong. Okay, so I need you guys to understand that we got to make change. We got to fight bad right-wing ideologies. We have to do all of these things without dehumanizing them. It is so important. I got into kind of an argument with someone in a live stream last night because they were not liking me saying this. And that's what's motivated me so much to spend most of this segment talking about this. Because again, it's not me saying that any particular individual is good or bad, because there are ones out there who genuinely are hateful in their heart. It's to say that the majority, or tons of conservatives, are just based on their life experiences and the media they tune into, believing things that they think are right. And it's not them being horrible. It's not them being evil to the bone people. And we've heard that. Y'all see me debate with people before about this. We've heard people say, all Republicans are evil and stuff like that. And that's not going to get us anywhere. If we're doing the exact same thing that we feel like they're doing to us, dehumanizing us, pretending like we're not human, pretending like we're doing things that we're not, and then we're turning around and dehumanizing them, then we're not going to get anywhere. It's so important that we understand this. And I'm sure many of you guys are completely on board. I've just heard a set amount of people who reject that and want to pretend like, no, people who have gotten radicalized and do have dangerous views are horrible, terrible, vicious, completely empathyless people. And that's just not the case. I wish that y'all would all be on board with that and understand that. It's so important for us to be able to make progress. And we can fight aggressively, politically, and we can reject ideologies without saying that everyone of a massive group of people are all inhuman and all of a completely different species that we shouldn't see as also having hearts and having love within those hearts and all of those things. Hopefully that makes sense. It's so important to me. Again, it's not discrediting the horrible things that have come from a particular set of ideologies. It's not discrediting any negative experiences any one of you have had with people of the other side. It's to say that the masses that you engage with, the masses that you see in all of these settings are also people trying to do the best they can, and they just have been radicalized mainly through media and otherwise, or the family they grew up in, to believe things that are not true. So super important that we're all on board with that. Okay, let's jump into a couple of these interviews. So I talked to a girl who was young, and we chatted. The question I wanted to feature, because I think it's very interesting to all of us, is what do you think the biggest criticism of Joe Biden is? And this was her answer. And what do you think the biggest failures of the Biden administration have been?
Oh gosh, a lot. Well, he says that he has done things when he hasn't, such as contributed to border security. I think for one thing, our president is Biden, but there are other people who are actually running our country, not him.
So that's a sentiment expressed by a lot of people on the ground there, is that some people and, behind the scenes are actually pulling the strings. And it's like, obviously there's tons of people work in the Biden administration, if that's what you mean, who do a lot of the work. But I think Biden's coherent enough to be able to make the big decisions and all that type of stuff. I don't think he's completely being walked around by people and all those kind of theories you hear. While I do recognize that his ability to communicate and think on his feet has definitely declined a lot.
And I think that a big thing, he said when he was running that he wouldn't defund the police, and he's done that. And I think that's a huge reason why we see so much crime today. I think that
Biden has defunded the police? Where?
Well, he hasn't defunded them, but he's defunded a lot of the police. And
because that is done on a citywide level, not the national level.
That's true. But overall, I think that this is the scariest times that we have lived in.
So that was one fascinating moment too, because I've heard a lot of people who said, I don't like Biden because he's defunding the police. And it's like, that's so weird that has trickled down through your media. That talking point, why would whoever she gets her media from, why would they say something that can be so easily fact checked? You know what I mean? Like, why would they put that out and then her accept it? Something that you can go and find that the federal government isn't making decisions about local city budgets. So the defunding that's gone on has been on a local level, and the city council would have had to vote on that. So pretty interesting. Next moment was this lady. We talked, guys, 20-minute on-camera interview. 20 minutes, and I had to extract the part that, I can't show a 20-minute interview on here, so I had to just extract one of the parts. And she was actually really delightful. Again, a good example of this. Once the camera was off, we just kind of stood there and talked for a long time about how we could move past hating based on political views and being gracious with one another, which is difficult because some of our political views, like I explained to her, represent your values. So some people I can't be friends with based on their political views because their political views represent their values, and that's perfectly acceptable. But it's interesting because a lot of people actually agree on some stuff, but then the framing and their understanding of reality makes it to where they can't understand that they agree. Anyways, let's watch this interview. And who have been some standout speakers from your perspective?
Lauren Boebert. I don't know if I'm saying the Congresswoman. Obviously, I love Marjorie Taylor Greene. Nigel Farage, obviously, he's always great. He's always a great asset to CPAC. Getting the British voice in there, the British conservative voice.
So you mentioned that you enjoyed Marjorie Taylor Greene and you like her. Nail down for me, because it always baffles me. What is it that resonates with conservatives about Marjorie Taylor Greene?
I think that she just is not afraid of speaking the truth and not afraid of being politically, quote unquote, incorrect. what she says is right. I mean, do I agree with every single thing? Nobody's black and white. Everybody has areas of gray in life. Life is gray. But I do think that her courage, and most Republicans, I hate to say this, but most Republicans who've been in the fold for all these decades and decades in politics, they kind of just tout the same thing, and they're full of bullshit. No, am I allowed to say bullshit? They're full of shit. They're just sitting on their, in their golden parachute, living for 20, 30 years in Washington, and they really don't do anything. And here you have these outliers that come in, they do things, they're not afraid of being politically incorrect, saying what the...
It did crack me up that she said, sitting in your golden parachute. And then I talked to, we'll wrap up with this one, a guy who I just kind of pitched to him like, listen, don't you think it's reasonable, even if you're not going to agree, don't you think it's reasonable to be very anti-Trump based on his actions of trying to overturn the election? If you look at every official process we have to verify if an election went one way or another and it went in Biden's direction, there's no court case or whatever that ruled in Trump's direction. Don't you think it's reasonable to believe that it's very dangerous what Trump's doing? And he doesn't really get on board with my pitch there. So I hear most people feel like, even a lot of liberals blame Biden for gas prices going high up. And first, I just kind of want to check if he was consistent, which he wasn't, on gas prices. People will always want to blame Biden for the gas prices going up but not going down. I think he's not really that responsible for either. Now we've seen 2 months of pretty historically fast drops in gas prices. Do you feel like it's something you should give Biden credit for, watching them drop?
No, I do not. I feel like he's using our reserves and using our reserves to drop the gas prices and trying to find the word here to basically fluctuate them just for a short period of time. Then I think they'll end up rising right back up to where they were.
Have you kept up at all with the January 6th committee hearings and kind of looking into what led because you think it's kind of stupid, or what?
Yeah. I just really don't see too much of a point in it, and that's it.
So, riddle me this, okay? If you're on the left and you feel like Biden won the election, you look, that's what the courts figured out, that's what kind of our official processes certified. And then you see through these investigations that Trump was doing everything possible to try to subvert what we would consider the rightful will of the people based on the election results and overturn the election. Don't you find it pretty reasonable that would be super scary? And regardless of even if you were conservative, you would expect people to be against a president who tried to reject the election?
Not necessarily. With all of the with all the stuff behind all the election fraud, I feel like I think he has every right to say that it was not a fair election.
Obviously, then I asked him, are you sure? Because the court cases didn't go that way and it didn't really go anywhere. But then again, another great example of this is we wrapped up our interview and we just both happened, that was the last interview I did that day, and we both happened to be walking the same direction to our cars. And so then we talked for like a super long time, him and one other guy who was with him. And we just kind of like went back and forth about all these different issues, but like very respectfully. And it's kind of that idea that, and I just want to make this so clear, a leader can have horrible intentions. A leader, like a, politician and a media figure, I'm so aware of the kind of vile and evil nature of some of these media figures and politicians. But when you go down on the ground and you're talking to individuals who are day to day just working, trying to live their life and believing these things that we see as very wrong, you can't see them as just fundamentally evil or something like that. Sort of loving, compassionate people also who, again, I see as profoundly misled. But that doesn't mean they don't have a beautiful, heart and soul in there, and doesn't mean that we can't connect with them as well. And I think that's how we bring people over. We connect with them on a human level, and then we bring in our politics. Because I could see in our conversation, he was resonating with some of the stuff I was saying about the election, about how, it's interesting how you believe this, but not this, and stuff like that. But you're never going to get there with anybody if you're addressing them as if they're some animal or some other species of human or something like that. It just makes no sense. And I really, really hope that, let me know what you think in the comments about this message, but I think it's something we should all be able to get on board with, especially as progressives. Again, it's not decreasing the significance of the danger of a particular ideology. It's to say that many of the people who believe in that ideology themselves are good at heart and they're misled. And that's my message for today about this.